Hello, welcome to Fotovian Learning Center. My name is William Manning. In this lesson, I'll show you how to bring life back into a dull situation using saturation in Adobe Photoshop. There are several ways to pop saturation into a photo, but today I'm going to show you how to use an adjustment layer to achieve this effect. I like to work with as large of an image as possible. First thing I do is hit the F key on the keyboard, and that will allow me to make my image full screen. Hit the Command space bar, and that will give me the option of creating as large of a photo as I can. I like to use as much real estate on my monitor as possible. You'll notice I have three palettes up: the Layers palette, the Adjustments palette, and the History palette. Those are the three palettes we're going to use today. The first thing I'm going to do is we're going to go up here under Layer, the Layer pull-down menu, go to New Adjustment Layer, and go to Hue Saturation. And this dialog box comes up, and it gives me the option of renaming this layer if I would like, but for our purposes today, we're just going to keep it as the Hue Saturation 1. Hit OK. And as you can notice over here on the Adjustments palette, we have several options here to work with. We have a Hue Saturation pull-down menu. Of course, it starts with Default, and it gives us several options to presets to work with if we would like. Cyanotype, as you can see what it does. Increase saturation more, does a pretty good job. And of course, you have several other options to work with. For our purposes today, we're going to leave that at default, and we're just going to ignore that. And we'll go to this other drop-down menu where we have all the colors, channels to work with, as well as master. I shouldn't really call that channels, but colors: reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, and magentas. I like to work with the individual colors because it gives me more control of what I can do. And you can notice we have three sliders: hue, saturation, and lightness. In most situations and with most of these colors, saturation is the only slider I'm going to work with. Every now and then I'll work with hue and lightness, but when I do work with those sliders, it's typically very, very minor adjustments. So let's go ahead and start working with the reds and see what we can do with the saturation. As you can see, as I pull the saturation slider towards the right, we really start popping the reds throughout the photo. I'm going to purposely not even purposely, we'll just go ahead, we're going to set those reds about here. That's starting to look really good. Then we'll go over here to yellows. We'll go through each color and see what we get. As you can see in the yellow, in the top right hand corner, it's really starting to pop some life back into that hillside that was looking pretty dull prior to that saturation move. Greens, I don't think green's going to do anything for us. No, it is not, so we'll just leave green as it is. Go to cyans. More than likely, cyan's going to affect the sky. And as you can see up here in the top left-hand corner, we do have some definition and some color starting to appear in the sky. I'm not trying to get rid of the overcast situation. It's okay that the viewer can see that it's an overcast day. That's okay, because obviously if we put a sunny situation in there, we would need shadows, and that we don't have here anyway. So let's just go ahead and try to put some definition in here, and we'll go ahead and work with blue slider, saturation slider for a minute, and again, it's popping a little bit more saturation in there as well, or I should say more definition. The problem that we're getting is our blues are starting to look a little more purplish. This is one of those rare situations where I'm going to go ahead and play with the hue slider just ever so slightly. I'm going to go on the minus side, and we're turning that purple into a blue cast. Then let's go to the lightness slider, and again I'm going to pull that on the minus side as well. That looks pretty good. Okay, what I have now, the photo looks pretty good for the most part. But this foreground log here, it looks like maybe a little too much red here. I could pull back the saturation on the red, but if I do it via this saturation slider, of course we'd have to go back to reds here. If If I do it via the slider here, the problem is it will make global, it will do it globally. In other words, it's going to affect the red saturation throughout the entire image. Well, I like the red on the logs over here in the sand and on the logs on the right hand side. So we're going to use the brush tool. So we'll go ahead and select brush, and you'll see our foreground colors here. We have a black swatch and a white swatch. Black will take away, white will bring back. So we're going to take away some of the effects, so we want to keep that on black. There's two ways of toggling back and forth on the foreground and background color here, or the black and white swatches. It's one we can click on the arrow, or you can use the X key on your keyboard to toggle back and forth. I prefer using the keyboard shortcut, pressing the X key. So let's go ahead, and this is where it's very important that we come up here and look at the opacity, because we don't want to obviously, by default, that opacity is probably going to come up at 100%, and the flow may possibly be 100% as well. Let's keep the opacity, let's take the opacity down to about 30%, and we're going to keep the flow at 80%. So let's go ahead and erase some of that red here into the foreground log, and you can see it's taken away some of the red. It's not quite as strong here, but it still gives us a lot of life in the photo. It looks pretty good to me. Let's call that our picture, and as you can see, we brought a lifeless photo back to life by simply popping the colors. Let's go ahead and flatten the layer, and we can simply do that by going to Layer, Flatten Image, and we go ahead and save your photo. I hope this lesson helps next time you encounter a dull situation out in the field. I invite you to visit Photovian.com and join the Photovian community. This is William Manning. Until next time, happy photography.